Hare Krishna devotees, welcome to, I think, day 24. Let me just check. Day 24 indeed. Day 24 of our Bhakti Vaibhava seminar on Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale, Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane, Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharne, Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pastyachari Shatarne. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita Gadadha Shivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vajkalpatarubhyas cha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. We're just starting chapter 10. Chapter 10 is titled Dhruva Maharaja's Fight with the Yakshas. So it's a shorter section, much shorter than the last one we did, which took like 4 hours or something. It's only 30 verses, which are divided into 5 sections as follows. First section is verse 1 and 2, and it's titled Dhruva Maharaj marries. Then the second section is just verse 3 on its own, and it's titled Dhruva's brother Uttama killed by a yaksha. Then the third section, verse 4 to verse 20, so that's the biggest section in the chapter. Dhruva attacks the yakshas. Pretty dramatic section. Then the fourth section is verse 21 to verse 29, and that's titled The Yakshas Use Mystical Powers. And the last section, number 5, it's just verse 30 on its own. The sages encourage Dhruva Maharaj. Right, so let us get into it. First of all, section 1, Dhruva Maharaj marries, and it's just verses 1 and 2. So we'll just go straight through. Verse 1, the great sage Maitreya said, "My dear Vidura, thereafter Dhruva Maharaj married the daughter of Prajapati Shishumara, whose name was Brahmi, and 2 sons named Kalpa and Vatsara were born of her." Right, so there's a short purport here. And first of all, just it seems that Dhruva married after his father left home, which is unusual. Normally the father would not leave home until the children are married, and then sort of his responsibilities are taken care of. But in this case, Dhruva married after his father left home. So there's a question. Seeing his father was fond of him, and it's the duty of a father to get children married, why didn't he do that first? The answer is that Uttanapad, the father, he was a Rajarshi, a saintly king. As soon as he saw Dhruva was ready to govern, he took the opportunity to go. So it's a rare case where we see the importance of self-realization above all other types of work. So Srila Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, Maharaj Uttanapad knew very well that to get his son Dhruva Maharaj married was not so important that it should take preference to his going away to the forest for self-realization. So that's what he did. He just went. Verse 2. The greatly powerful Dhruva Maharaj had another wife named Ila, who was the daughter of the demigod Vayu. By her he begot a son named Utkala and a very beautiful daughter. Okay, so next section is just this one verse, verse 3. Dhruva's brother Uttama killed by a yaksha. And so it's just the verse, there's no purport even. Okay, so verse 3, Dhruva Maharaj's younger brother Uttama, who was still unmarried, once went on a hunting excursion and was killed by a powerful yaksha in the Himalaya mountains. Along with him, his mother Suruchi also followed the path of her son. In other words, she died. We read about that a couple of days ago. So now the third section, the biggest section in this chapter, verse 4 to verse 30, Dhruva attacks the yakshas. So we'll just read the verses first of all, then we'll come back and do everything. Verse 4. When Dhruva Maharaj heard of the killing of his brother Uttama by the yakshas in the Himalaya mountains, being overwhelmed with lamentation and anger, he got on his chariot and went out for victory over the city of the yakshas, Alakapuri. Verse 5. Dhruva Maharaj went to the northern direction of the Himalayan range. In a valley, he saw a city full of ghostly persons who were followers of Lord Shiva. 6. Maitreya continued, My dear Vidura, as soon as Dhruva Maharaj reached Alakapuri, he immediately blew his conch shell, and the sound reverberated throughout the entire sky and in every direction. The wives of the yakshas became very much frightened. From their eyes it was apparent that they were full of anxiety. Verse 7. O hero Vidura, the greatly powerful heroes of the yakshas, unable to tolerate the resounding vibration of the conch shell of Dhruva Maharaj, came forth from their city with weapons and attacked Dhruva. 8. Dhruva Maharaj, who was a great charioteer and certainly a great bowman also, immediately began to kill them by simultaneously discharging arrows, 3 at a time. 9. When the heroes of the yakshas saw that all their heads were thus being threatened by Dhruva Maharaj, they could very easily understand their awkward position, and they concluded that they would certainly be defeated. But as heroes, they lauded the action of Dhruva. Lauded means they praised the action of Dhruva. Verse 10. Just like serpents who cannot tolerate being trampled upon by anyone's feet, the yakshas, being intolerant of the wonderful prowess of Dhruva Maharaj, threw twice as many arrows, 6 from each of their soldiers, and thus they very valiantly exhibited their prowess. Verses 11 and 12. The yaksha soldiers were 130,000 strong, all greatly angry and all desiring to defeat the wonderful activities of Dhruva Maharaj. With full strength, they showered upon Maharaj Dhruva along with his chariot and charioteer, various types of feathered arrows, parigas, iron bludgeons, nistrimshas, swords, prasashulas, tridents, parashvadas, lances, shaktis, pikes, rishtis, spears, and bhushundi weapons. 13. Dhruva Maharaj was completely covered by an incessant shower of weapons, just as a mountain is covered by incessant rainfall. Verse 14. All the siddhas from the higher planetary systems were observing the fight from the sky, and when they saw that Dhruva Maharaj had been covered by the incessant arrows of the enemy, they roared tumultuously, "The grandson of Manu, Dhruva, is now lost." They cried that Dhruva Maharaj was just like the sun, and that now he had set within the ocean of the Yakshas. Verse 15. The Yakshas, being temporarily victorious, exclaimed that they had conquered Dhruva Maharaj. But in the meantime, Dhruva's chariot suddenly appeared, just as the sun suddenly appears from within foggy mist. Verse 16. Dhruva Maharaj's bow and arrows twanged and hissed, causing lamentation in the hearts of his enemies. He began to shoot incessant arrows, shattering all their different weapons, just as the blasting wind scatters the assembled clouds in the sky. Verse 17. The sharp arrows released from the bow of Dhruva Maharaj pierced the shields and bodies of the enemy, like the thunderbolts released by the King of Heaven, which dismantle the bodies of the mountains. Verses 18 and 19, the great sage Maitreya continued, "My dear Vidura, the heads of those who were cut to pieces by the arrows of Dhruva Maharaj were decorated very beautifully with earrings and turbans. The legs of their bodies were as beautiful as golden palm trees. Their arms were decorated with golden bracelets and armlets, and on their heads there were very valuable helmets bedecked with gold. All these ornaments lying on that battlefield were very attractive and could bewilder the mind of a hero." Verse 20. The remaining yakshas who some or other were not killed had their limbs cut to pieces by the arrows of the great warrior Dhruva Maharaj. Thus they began to flee, just as elephants flee when defeated by a lion. Right, so here we go, devotees. I mean, there's not so many purports there. There are a number, but anyway, we'll just do them in this way as we normally do. Verses with purports now. Verse 4. So it's section 3, verse 4 to verse 20. Dhruva attacks the Yakshas. When Dhruva Maharaj heard of the killing of his brother Uttama by the Yakshas in the Himalaya mountains, being overwhelmed with lamentation and anger, he got on his chariot and went out for victory over the city of the Yakshas, Alakapuri. So there's a little purport here. Prabhupada begins the purport by saying, Dhruva Maharaj is becoming angry, overwhelmed with grief, and envious of the enemies, was not incompatible with his position as a great devotee. Not incompatible. I mean, it's quite possible for the situation to be like that, for him to become very angry. So it's a misunderstanding that a devotee should not be angry or envious or lament. Dhruva was the king, and it was his duty to take revenge against the Yakshas. Verse 5. Dhruva Maharaj went to the northern direction of the Himalayan range. In a valley, he saw a city full of ghostly persons who were followers of Lord Shiva. Yes, it is a very short purport here. In this verse it is stated that the yakshas are more or less devotees of Lord Shiva. By this indication, the yakshas may be taken to be the Himalayan tribes like the Tibetans. Okay, interesting. Verse 6, Maitreya continued, "My dear Vidura, as soon as Dhruva Maharaj reached Alakapuri, he immediately blew his conch shell, and the sound reverberated throughout the entire sky and in every direction. The wives of the yakshas became very much frightened. From their eyes it was apparent that they were full of anxiety." Verse 7, "O hero Vidura, the greatly powerful heroes of the yakshas, unable to tolerate the resounding vibration of the conch shell of Dhruva Maharaj, came forth from their city with weapons and attacked Dhruva." Verse 8, "Dhruva Maharaj, who was a great charioteer and certainly a great bowman also, immediately began to kill them by simultaneously discharging arrows 3 at a time." Verse 9, "When the heroes of the yakshas saw that all their heads were being thus threatened by Dhruva Maharaj, they could very easily understand their awkward position, and they concluded that they would certainly be defeated. But as heroes, they lauded the action of Dhruva. They praised Dhruva's fighting." And again, there's a short purport. I'll just read the whole thing. "This spirit of fighting in a sporting attitude is very significant in this verse. The yakshas were severely attacked. Dhruva Maharaj was their enemy, but still upon witnessing the wonderful heroic acts of Maharaj Dhruva, they were very pleased with him. This straightforward appreciation of an enemy's prowess is a characteristic of real Kshatriya spirit." Verse 10, "Just like serpents who cannot tolerate being trampled upon by anyone's feet, the yakshas, being intolerant of the wonderful prowess of Dhruva Maharaj, threw twice as many arrows, 6 from each of their soldiers, and thus they very valiantly exhibited their prowess." Verses 11 and 12, "The yaksha soldiers were 130,000 strong, all greatly angry, and all desiring to defeat the wonderful activities of Dhruva Maharaj. With full strength, they showered upon Maharaj Dhruva, along with his chariot and charioteer, various types of feathered arrows, parigas, iron bludgeons, nistrimshas, swords, prasashulas, tridents, parashvadas, lances, shaktis, pikes, rishtis, spears, and bushundi, weapons." Verse 13, "Dhruva Maharaj was completely covered by an incessant shower of weapons, just as a mountain is covered by incessant rainfall." So there's a purport here, short purport. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that even though Dhruva was covered with arrows, it doesn't mean he was dead. The example of the mountain covered with rain is suitable because it washes the mountain clean. Similarly, all the arrows gave Dhruva Maharaj more vigor to fight. Srila Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, in other words, whatever incompetency he might have had was washed away. Verse 14, all the siddhas from the higher planetary systems were observing the fight from the sky. And when they saw that Dhruva Maharaj had been covered by the incessant arrows of the enemy. They roared tumultuously. The grandson of Manu, Dhruva, is now lost. They cried that Dhruva Maharaj was just like the sun, and that now he had set within the ocean of the Yakshas. So there's 2 paragraphs, actually, of purports here. So the word, Prabhupada says, the word Manava is significant, usually means human. Dhruva is described here as Manava, or a descendant of Manu. All humanity descends from Manu. Manu's lawgiver. Even today, Hindus follow his laws. So every human is Manava, descendant of Manu. But Dhruva was called Manava because he's a great devotee. And the second paragraph, the people from Siddhaloka were anxious for Dhruva. Srila Rupa Goswami says, not only is the devotee protected by the Lord, but demigods, even ordinary men, were anxious for him. Comparison here of Dhruva seemed to merge into the ocean of Yakshas. Also significant. That's also significant. When the sun sets, it seems that it drowns in the ocean, but actually the ocean has no difficulty. Similarly, Dhruva had no difficulty, even though he appeared to drown in an ocean of Yakshas. Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, as the sun rises again in due course at the end of the night, so Dhruva Maharaj, although he might have been in difficulty, because after all it was a fight, and in any fighting activities there are reverses, but that didn't mean that he was defeated. Verse 15, the Yakshas, being temporarily victorious, exclaimed that they had conquered Dhruva Maharaj. But in the meantime, Dhruva's chariot suddenly appeared, just as the sun suddenly appears from within foggy mist. So there's a little bit of a purport here. Dhruva's compared to the sun, the Yakshas to foggy mist. Fog is insignificant compared to the sun. So, but although the sun is sometimes covered by fog, actually the sun cannot be covered with anything. It's only our eyes that can be covered, not the sun. So Srila Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, by this comparison to the sun, the greatness of Dhruva Maharaj in all circumstances is affirmed. Right, verse 16. Dhruva Maharaj's bow and arrows twanged and hissed, causing lamentation in the hearts of his enemies. He began to shoot incessant arrows, shattering all their different weapons, just as the blasting wind scatters the assembled clouds in the sky. 17. The sharp arrows released, well, there's no purport to 16, or 17 for that matter. The sharp arrows released from the bow of Dhruva Maharaj pierced the shields and bodies of the enemy, like the thunderbolts released by the King of Heaven, which dismantle the bodies of the mountains. Verses 18 and 19 together. The great sage Maitreya continued, my dear Vidura, the heads of those who were cut to pieces by the arrows of Dhruva Maharaj were decorated very beautifully with earrings and turbans. The legs of their bodies were as beautiful as golden palm trees. Their arms were decorated with golden bracelets and anklets, and on their heads there were very valuable helmets bedecked with gold. All these ornaments lying on that battlefield were very attractive and could bewilder the mind of a hero. So, okay, this is very short purport. I'll just read the whole thing. It appears that in those days soldiers used to go to the battlefield, highly decorated with golden ornaments and with helmets and turbans. And when they were dead, the booty was taken by the enemy party. Their falling dead in battle, with their many golden ornamental dresses, was certainly a lucrative opportunity for the heroes on the battlefield. Okay. Verse 20. The remaining yakshas, who somehow or other were not killed, had their limbs cut to pieces by the arrows of the great warrior Dhruva Maharaj. Thus they began to flee, just as elephants flee when defeated by a lion. Okay, so now that's the end of the third section. Here we have now section 4. The yakshas use mystical powers, from verse 21 to verse 29. And you know what? There's not a single purport there. So we're just going to read, of course, straight through. Verse 21. Dhruva Maharaj, the best of human beings, observed that in that great battlefield, not one of the opposing soldiers was left standing with proper weapons. He then desired to see the city of Alakapuri, but he thought to himself, no one knows the plans of the mystic yakshas. Verse 22. In the meantime, while Dhruva Maharaj, doubtful of his mystic enemies, was talking with his charioteer, they heard a tremendous sound, as if the whole ocean were there, and they found that from the sky a great dust storm was coming over them from all directions. 23. Within a moment the whole sky was overcast with dense clouds, and severe thundering was heard. There was glittering electric lightning and severe rainfall. Verse 24. My dear faultless Vidura, in that rainfall there was blood, mucus, pus, stool, urine, and marrow falling heavily before Dhruva Maharaj, and there were trunks of bodies falling from the sky. 25. Next, a great mountain was visible in the sky, and from all directions hailstones fell, along with lances, clubs, swords, iron bludgeons, and great pieces of stone. Verse 26. Dhruva Maharaj also saw many big serpents with angry eyes, vomiting forth fire and coming to devour him, along with groups of mad elephants, lions and tigers. Verse 27. Then, as if it were the time of the dissolution of the whole world, the fierce sea with foaming waves and great roaring sounds came forward before him. Verse 28. The demon yakshas are by nature very heinous, and by their demoniac power of illusion, they can create many strange phenomena to frighten one who is less intelligent. So, verse 29. When the great sages heard that Dhruva Maharaj was overpowered by the illusory mystic tricks of the demons, they immediately assembled to offer him auspicious encouragement. And devotees, believe it or not, here we are now, the last verse in the whole chapter. So it's section 5, verse 30. The sages encourage Dhruva Maharaj. All the sages said, Dear Dhruva, O son of King Uttanapad, may the Supreme Personality of Godhead, known as Shangadanva, who relieves the distresses of his devotees. Kill all your threatening enemies. The holy name of the Lord is as powerful as the Lord himself. Therefore, simply by chanting and hearing the holy name of the Lord, many men can be fully protected from fierce death without difficulty. Thus a devotee is saved. Okay, so there is a purport here, which is, it's not long. So the rishis approached Dhruva when his mind was perplexed due to the yaksha's magic. The devotee is always protected by the Lord. By the Lord's inspiration only, the sages came to assure him that there was no danger because he was surrendered to the Lord. So if a devotee at the time of death chants Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, by the mercy of the Lord he goes back to Godhead, and he never has to come back again. So Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, simply by chanting the holy name of the Lord, one can surpass the ocean of death. So Dhruva Maharaj was certainly able to surpass the illusory magical feats of the yakshas, which for the time being disturbed his mind. All right, so there you go, devotees. That's the whole section finished. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.